Outbreak from Black Ops Cold War or Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. Which one is better? Today we're going to be going through every single thing that I like more in each mode and just comparing which one is more enjoyable as an open world zombies experience. Of course, this should go without saying, but obviously Modern Warfare Zombies just released, whereas Outbreak got months and months worth of DLC added. So of course, it might seem like an unfair comparison to you, but I think comparing them makes a lot of sense just because it shows us what I think Modern Warfare Zombies needs to improve upon, and also shows us what it already has improved upon over Outbreak. So let's start off with talking about what is better within Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, and I think the biggest thing I want to mention is just the amount of content available within the mode. I do feel like there's just more to offer within the Modern Warfare Zombies experience. There's obviously more guns. I mean, there's over 100 guns playable in this game currently. There's all the missions, contracts, a couple more. I mean, I wouldn't say there's a lot more, like objectives, because if you compare the contracts to the side objectives and the main objectives of Outbreak, it's probably about the same, but I feel like there's just at least a little bit more depth to the contracts within Modern Warfare Zombies. Of course, you also have the missions, which are essentially our version of Easter eggs. I know they're not exactly the same, but there's a lot there to grind for in terms of content. Of course, you have the camo grind, which also existed in Cold War Zombies, but I felt like because Cold War also had round-based maps, most people grinded in round-based regardless. It wasn't something you normally did with an Outbreak, but this mode has just a lot of different things to go for at this current point. Of course, we're just going to be getting a lot more content later down the line, and I'm really excited for what they're going to be adding later on. But as it is currently, I do think there is quite a decent amount of things to do on this map when you compare it to Outbreak. It's not nearly as much as it should be. I still think it is lacking in some areas, but there is a lot of options. There is a lot of places to go, a lot of things to do, and I do like that. Next up, another really important thing is the difficulty. I think the difficulty of Modern Warfare Zombies is extremely better than Black Ops Cold War's Outbreak. And honestly, I think that was a problem with the entirety of Cold War. It was just way too easy. I would argue it's probably the easiest zombies mode of all time, and that does take away some of that enjoyment of intensity, having moments where you get out of a situation really fast and you kind of surprised that you lived. But I feel like there was just way too many things that just saved your life in that mode, and I do feel like Modern Warfare Zombies it has a better layer of difficulty to it, especially when you get to the tier 2, tier 3 zones. I don't think all of the difficulty is perfect. I think the way they balanced it with being a solo player compared to being with a full team, it's not really that well balanced currently, especially when it comes to the damage values on certain bosses. But I am just glad we at least have a somewhat more challenging mode here. It's not that hard, obviously. If you stick around the tier 1 areas, or you get the best weapons in the game and go to tier 2 and tier 3, it's not going to be that hard. But when you just compare it to Outbreak, it is definitely a lot more challenging, and that is definitely a good thing. Another thing is that a lot of the progression within this mode, a lot of the grinds that you can go for, like we mentioned before, are things that will be able to go on for a while. It's not something that once you unlock everything, you're just kind of done. Because you use the items in your stash constantly and you keep using them, you're going to want to go back in and keep looting for more items. You're going to have to use those items eventually, or you can lose your weapons. There's a lot more stakes there. And I do think that's just going to make the replayability at least a little bit better than what it felt like in Outbreak. And this is a little bit more to do with the entirety of Cold War Zombies, not just Outbreak. But the only real outgame progression, other than obviously leveling up your guns and the camos and such, but when you talk about the Ethereum crystal grinds with upgrading your perks and your specialist and all those things, that was something that once you do, it's done. You do it and it's over. That's all you can do really, and that's the only thing there to grind for. There's no more grinds beyond that, I guess, when you finish all the upgrades with the Ethereum crystals. But in this game, like I said, because you have to use the stuff, there's always going to be more things to do within the game. Even if it's somewhat repetitive and you might not really want to do it, it's still there. If you use your good items, you're gonna have to go back in and try to go find more of those items again because you've already used them. And I do think that will add some more replayability to the mode. I do also love all the massive hordes within this mode as well, because Outbreak wasn't really able to handle that many zombies at once. I don't even think Modern Warfare Zombies is able to handle that many zombies, because usually it destroys my game or makes the frame rates really low. But I do like that they are at least trying to add a lot of bigger hordes. Of course, when you're exfilling, so many zombies spawn at you, and having all those zombies at once is a pretty crazy experience. There's a lot of bosses that can be on you at once as well. I do think it's just a little bit more to it with that. Of course, when it doesn't crash your game, but just the overall concept of having all those zombies, I think, is kind of cool. Now, this last thing is not something I really care about that much, but I just want to point it out. The graphics are a lot superior, but I don't think the visuals are better, which is why I'm just kind of mentioning it as like a semi-positive thing for this mode. If we're just talking about graphic fidelity and such, like, of course it looks better than Cold War. Cold War had a much more cartoony feel to it, but I think visually speaking, I do prefer how Outbreak looked, which is going to segue us into the things that Outbreak did better. And the first thing I want to start with is the color palette. That is a huge thing to me. I just think visually Outbreak was more pleasing to look at, even though if objectively speaking, the graphics are a lot more realistic and more detailed. I think the biggest thing that Outbreak does better is the option to actually play by yourself in a solo mode in private matches or with your friends. You know, of course, you do not have to join some public match every time you want to play. And also, it can go on for unlimited time. I just prefer that structure of Outbreak over this Modern Warfare Zombies mode because it just works better for what Zombies always has been, and that is of course a wave-based mode where you increase in rounds and it gets harder and harder as that time goes on, and you can go on for as long as you want. You know, whenever you get bored, you can exfil, or eventually you might die, and then that's when your game ends. I just prefer that formula a lot better than this whole extraction-based game that Modern Warfare Zombies is. And I think the ability to actually just jump in solo and play for unlimited time is really huge. And you could technically do the extraction shooter element of Modern Warfare Zombies, but with having it solo in private matches and even possibly unlimited time. So I don't think it has to be this whole round-based thing that Outbreak kind of was. But in general, I do think that is just a more enjoyable formula for me. And although I think some of the objectives and contracts are a little more interesting in Modern Warfare Zombies, I think going through the missions and the objectives and everything like that in Outbreak and going to a whole new region each wave, I think was just a little bit more exciting and just felt like the structure there was a bit more familiar and a bit better. Another huge thing is the actual map itself. So of course, Modern Warfare Zombies is just one full Warzone map that we will be getting in Warzone in just actually less than a month from now. But in Outbreak, it was made up of a bunch of different regions from the Fireteam maps in Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer. Also, some of them were also combined arms maps. Now, I know those map regions were supposed to create a Warzone map called Earl Mountains that never ended up releasing. They ended up scrapping it. But I do think those regions, those areas and locations are just way more interesting than what we have within Modern Warfare Zombies. I absolutely loved a lot of the regions. Like you got, you know, the Alpine map, which was the snowy mountain, which had, you know, you can go on snowmobiles and go down a mountain. Like that was a really cool area, cool location. You have Collateral, which was a really unique location as well. Armada is easily the coolest part of Outbreak, easily the coolest region. You also had more woodland areas like Ruka and Duga, and then of course you had Golova. Like there's a lot of unique locations. There's a nighttime place with Sanatorium. I just felt like the regions were just more interesting because of that, because there was more diversity within the locations you were going to. But in Modern Warfare Zombies, the whole map feels the same. Like, I'll be honest, until you get to Tier 3, that's when things start to feel different because they have the whole storm and the atmosphere is a little bit, like, muddier, I guess. But the map itself, just especially when you're on Tier 1, it's the exact same. It really is. You never get different biomes, different regions. It's just the exact same place all the way through. And that makes sense from a realistic standpoint. But I just wish they found a way to implement different regions, maybe like different places you can teleport to. And I know this might not be as big of a problem once we get more maps, because I guarantee when they add Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep to Warzone throughout the DLC season, because that was confirmed to be happening, I guarantee they'll be adding those maps to Zombies as well. And that might spice things up just a little bit at least to have those other maps as other playable places. But I think currently right now it just feels a bit meh. Like, I don't really feel that Zombies feel, and I don't think Outbreak did that all that well either, but it at least just had more interesting locations that were just more enjoyable to explore. Another big positive with Outbreak is no AI soldiers. This is huge to me because I despise the AI soldiers within Modern Warfare Zombies. I think that's one of the worst additions to this mode. And I don't really know why they did it. I don't know if they really needed to have that realism aspect to it, where of course we have to have, you know, some campaign tie-ins. So let's throw in some soldiers from the campaign. Well, I guess they're technically new soldiers for the zombie storyline. They're not in the campaign, but you know what I mean. They feel a lot more like AI soldiers you'd be fighting in campaign, and also kind of like how it was in DMZ. and I just don't enjoy it. I think if they were only in like strongholds, which there are some strongholds on the map, if they were only there, it wouldn't be a big problem. But there's so many mercenary camps on the map. There's so many places where they randomly show up. A lot of the missions, a lot of the contracts involve mercenaries as well. And they're just kind of annoying because not only are they really strong, but also they just take away from that zombies feel. I really don't want to be fighting AI soldiers in zombies. I don't think they have a place. Sure, every now and then, maybe. I know, Carrier from Advanced Warfare had that one little part of the game where every now and then there would be AI soldiers, and no one liked that then. So why do you think we would like it now? I just think they don't have a place in this game. I really don't want them to be included in any future maps. And I would love if they honestly just remove them from the game, but I don't think they're going to do that because they are so heavily built into the game already. But I just prefer the aspect of not having them, and Outbreak doesn't have them. So that's a great thing about Outbreak that just we don't have to deal with. We only have zombies and bosses within Outbreak, and they are really great. In terms of optimization, I do think Outbreak is a better optimized mode. I just think I never really had any problems with it. When I think back to Outbreak, of course I had my issues with the mode, but I never felt like it was like crashing that often or there was that many bugs, whereas Modern Warfare Zombies right now is probably the buggiest zombies experience I've ever had in Call of Duty Zombies. Another point that is less about the mode itself, but more about how it affects the rest of the game. Outbreak in Black Ops Cold War was able to exist alongside round-based and onslaught modes. Of course, do I think that round-based probably got shafted quite a bit because of the inclusion of Outbreak? Probably. I'm sure Outbreak would have, if it didn't exist, I'm sure there would have been more content in round-based modes, but at least round-based was able to exist there. But with Modern Warfare Zombies, it has completely replaced round-based for this year, and that, of course, is something that I don't like. I think there would be a lot more people on board with this mode if it was able to coexist alongside round-based within the same game. So less about the mode itself, but just more about the effect it had on that game's zombies specifically. And the last thing I want to mention for what I think is better in Outbreak is I just feel like because the maps are a lot smaller, of course, in Outbreak, because you only have the specific regions that you go to, there's less time where I have to just aimlessly, drive a vehicle around the map or run around the map to get to another location. I don't feel like I have those moments as often because not only is there a lot of ways to get around the map in Outbreak, but also the maps are just a lot smaller, obviously. So getting from one point to the other on the map is not something that's going to take forever. Whereas I feel like in Modern Warfare Zombies, there's plenty of times where I'm just aimlessly running around the map or driving a vehicle or trying to get from point A to point B. And obviously those moments are not that fun. And I just think that Outbreak handles that a lot better. So all in all, I honestly don't think I prefer one mode over the other at this current point. I think there's things that both of them do way better than the other. And overall, I'm still having a lot of issues with both of them. Like, I don't think this is in any way close to as enjoyable as just traditional round-based zombies. I would love to get back to that, and I hope that they really knock it out of the park with next year's Call of Duty. I'm really worried and concerned about it, but hopefully it is really good. But this mode, it's totally fine for what it is, and I don't think it's a terrible, zombies experience. I don't think either of these games are. There's been a lot of people who've complained about both of these modes over the years. Of course, this one just came out, but in terms of just the build-up and the hype-up for it, a lot of people were complaining about the idea of it. I think they're totally fine. They're totally fine. I don't mind them. But at this current point, I don't really think I prefer one or the other. Maybe I'll decide that later on, but right now, they're kind of the same to me. And that is going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you all in my next one. Peace out.